Good day, everyone. We will implement database backup and maintenance job to use secondary replica on a SQL Server instance with always on availability group. Let's get started. I'll be using this particular environment for this video. We have three replicas, JBS AG1, JBS AG2, and JBS AG3 as far as the availability group is concerned. JBS AG1 and JBS AG2 is located in East US and JBS AG3 is in Korea Central. The AG that we are going to use for this particular video is called JBS AG. It has got a database called JBS Wiki added to it, and the listener used is JBS APP. This availability group uses the underlying cluster JBS Wiki cluster. JBS AG1, JBS AG2, and JBS AG3 are configured using synchronous commit mode. JBS AG1 is a current primary replica. So let's get into the primary replica, which is JBS AG1, and then look at the always on availability group dashboard to just reiterate what was discussed. So if we look at the dashboard, we are able to see that we have three replicas, and the availability mode is set to synchronous, and the database added to the availability group is JBS Wiki. If you can see, yeah. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to implement a backup solution and also a maintenance solution that is going to take backups as well as going to perform DBCC check DB. And for this, I'm going to utilize Ola Hellengren script here. So this is the link. I'll put it in the video description. You guys can use that. So let's click on the downloads here, and then we have this maintenance solution.sql. So let's click on that. So it is downloader. So let me open that file. Open this file that I've downloaded from Ola's website on JBS AG1. So we have these parameters here. So if you see here, the create jobs is set to S here. Backup directory is set to null. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to this particular location. So it's a network location. So the backup is not going to happen on the local server. So let me change that, the backup directory, and cleanup time. Output file directory, all these things, it's going to be the default. I'm not going to change that. So now let me execute this first on JBS AG1. This is completed. Now what I'll do is I will connect to JBS AG2 as well, and then execute the same query. Then let me connect to JBS AG3, which is the secondary replica, and then execute the same query there as well. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create all these required jobs, and once it is created, I'll be changing the required settings as far as the always on availability group is concerned, and then I will modify these jobs to make sure the backup and DBCC check DB is basically happening on the secondary replica. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click on the availability group on the primary replica and click on properties, and we have this option here called backup preference. And if we see here, we basically have this option which basically tells where should the backups occur. Preferred secondary is what I've selected right now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this preferred secondary option. And if you look at it, what does it mean? It basically tells automated backup for this availability group should occur on a secondary replica. If there is no secondary replica available, backups will be performed on the primary replica. So what does this mean is whenever the secondary replicas are available, the backups will be happening there. And in case if all the available secondary replicas are down, that is when it will perform the backup on the primary replica. The second option is secondary only. In this case, all automated backups for this availability group will or must occur on a secondary replica. And third option is primary, which basically tells like all backups for this availability group will occur on the current primary replica. Any replica basically tells like the backup can occur on any replica in the availability group. And we have this backup priority here. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to have the default value here. Yep. So you have this option to exclude the replica. For example, if you feel like one of the replicas, you don't want the backup to happen. For example, in our case, JBS AG1 and AG2 is in East US and JBS AG3 is in Korea Central. For example, if you feel like the backup directory is in East US, and if you feel like if I let the backup happen on Korea Central, which is in JBS AG3, then there can be a kind of a slowness due to latency issue, because the backup directory is in East US, and then JBS AG3 is in Korea Central, and then let's consider like the backup is going to happen from this secondary. Then there can be a latency issue because it is a geographically separated location, East US and Korea Central. In that case, what you can do is like you can click on this option, exclude replica, and that way what happens is like the backups will never ever happen on that. But since this is a kind of a DR location, and in case if you exclude this replica, you need to ensure like it gets enabled when you fail over from East US to Korea Central. So that is something that you need to keep in mind. And as far as the backup priority is concerned, higher the value, the probability is more on that particular replica. For example, if I select JBS AG2 as like, let's say 100 and put everything else as 0, then always a backup is going to happen there. But what I'll do here is like I will leave the default, which is 50, 50, 50. So that means like now I have selected preferred secondary. Until and unless one of the secondary is available, the backup can happen either on JBS AG2 or JBS AG3. So one good thing here is like the backups are not happening on the local replica. That is, for example, if JBS AG1 is the secondary or JBS AG2 is the secondary, the backup is not happening on the local server. Like if JBS AG2 is secondary and the backup happens, it is not going to happen on JBS AG2. I'm using an UNC path, network path, and the backup is going to happen on that particular directory. So that is one configuration I've already done, if you remember when I ran that maintenance.sql. So now what we'll do is like let's go to the SQL Server agent job and right click here and then click on refresh and see the backups have completed. Backups jobs are created, and I'm able to see that the backup jobs are created here. Let's open database backup user database full. Again, this is a demo machine, so I'm just going to open the required jobs and I'm going to change that. But in case if it is going to be a production server, you need to take care and then do all these things and all the jobs required, and you will have to basically clean up the jobs that are not required. So let's go to the steps here and then click on edit here. And if you see here, we have this command. This stored procedure database backup is the one that is going to be utilized for performing the database backup. So databases, I will leave it to user databases. And if you see here, the directory is an UNC path. Backup type is set to full. So now what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to use an option called copy underscore maybe like at copy only, and then toggle it to S. So that means what happens is like if you want to perform a full database backup on the secondary replica, it has to be a copy only backup. Yep. So that is the reason I've mentioned copy only equal to Y here. Backup type is set to full. I want verify. I want the backup job to verify the database backup once it is completed. Cleanup time, I will change that to maybe like 90. Yep. And what I'll do is like checksum. I will leave it to Y, and log to table also to Y. So what I'll do, I will click on select all and copy it, and then click on OK, and I will do the same changes on JBS AG2 and JBS AG3 as well. Yep. So full database backup for the user database. Let's go to the steps, click on edit, and then paste that information here. So copy only equal to Y. That's the important thing. Yeah. So let's select that, and let's do the same thing on JBS AG3 as well. So the user database backup, that's here. Click on properties, and then go to the steps, click on edit, and paste it here. So this is done. As far as the full database backup is concerned, or as far as the secondary replica is concerned, it has to be a copy only backup. Now let's turn our attention to the transaction log backup. Yeah. So what we'll do is like, let's go to the transaction log backup here, which is user database log. Click on steps, and then click on edit here. And then if you see here, it uses the same stored procedure database backup. Our database is equal to user databases, and directory is this UNC path. Backup type is equal to log. I will be using verify equal to S, and then here cleanup time would be like set to 90. And remember to put a comma there, and then it should be a checksum, and then I need a checksum, and also like log to table is equal to Y. So log to table basically tells like whatever you're going to run, that particular information will be moved to a table called command log. So now what I'm going to do is like, I'm going to, I've not done any changes except this cleanup time. So let me select all and click on copy. And what I'll do is like, I will do the same changes on AG2 and AG3 as well, as far as the transaction log backup is concerned. Now, yep, let's do the same thing here as well. So click on OK. And now on JBS AG3. Yep. Once this is done, what we'll do is like we will do the same changes for DBCC check DB as well. So click on select all, and then paste it. Yep, so this is the only change that we are doing here. So one thing to remember is like you don't, if you want to take a full backup on the secondary replica, it needs to be in copy only backup. But transaction log, it should be a normal backup. You can't use that switch called copy only for the transaction log backup. So this is done as well. Now what I'll do is like, I will see, I will just go in and then I will look for database integrity check for user databases. Let's click on steps here, click on edit here. And then if you see here, we have the stored procedure database integrity check that will be used for performing DBCC check DB. I'll be using this database, all the user database. I'll use this option. And after that, what I'm going to mention is like I'm going to tell them like we have availability replicas for this particular instance. And then I'm going to tell the stored procedure that please run DBCC check DB for the user database on the preferred backup replica, whatever is selected. So in our case, we have selected it as the secondary. So what will happen is like DBCC check DB will basically be happening on the secondary replica. So what we'll do now, let's click on parse to make sure everything is okay. And then let's copy this one, and then do the same thing as previous, where we will replace all these jobs on JBS AG2 and JBS AG3 as well. So let's click on steps here. So everything is fast as far as JBS AG1 and JBS AG2 is concerned, but JBS AG3, as it is located in Korea Central, it is taking some time. Like if you notice, like even uh, opening these jobs here is basically taking some time. That's because of the latency issue that we have since it is located in Korea Central. So let's click on edit here and then put this command here as well. So let's click OK here. Now, once this is done, we will start each of these jobs and then basically see where the backups are happening. Yep. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to refresh it here. Refresh all these instances. AG3 is going to take like a couple of seconds here because of the latency. So now what we'll do is like we will try opening this backup location and then yeah, and then let's see if we have any backups there. So we don't have any backups here right now. Okay, so it is just created. So now what I'm going to do is like we know that the primary replica is JBS AG1. Let's look at that one more time. Let's refresh it. This is the primary replica. So now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to start the backup here. The full database backup, user database full. Let's see what happens. The backup. This is the primary replica. This is just completed. Now, if I see here, the backup has not happened here. Yeah. So let's look at the job history here. So it is started and it completed, but we did not complete the database backup. Yeah. So if you see here, this is basically telling availability group backup preference is secondary. This preferred backup replica is set to no, so that is the reason the backup did not happen here. Yep. So let me copy this information. Maybe like we can use that later if required. So we have a clear-cut detail here, basically stating like this is like not the preferred replica. So what we'll do now, we will start the backup job on JBS AG2 and then see what happens. So let me open it, and then if you see here, the user database backup full, let's start it. Okay, so if we see here, what I'm able to see is like there is a folder created. Then if I see here, the backup is taken. So if we see here, the database for as soon as I started the job in JBS AG2, the full backup is performed. So whatever we have selected, that has happened. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same thing on JBS AG3 as well, because if you remember, the backup preference was set to 50 and we have not excluded the replica. So what I'll do is like I will try starting the backup here as well and then see if the backup is going to happen. If the backup happens, then we have a very good lesson to learn, and then we'll take it from there. So let this complete, and let's wait for it to complete, and then we will see if the backup is complete. Backup is performed or not. The job is completed. So if I see here, now let's click here. So let's refresh it and then get to this folder. Then if we see here, the backups, when we started it on JBS AG3, the backup was not performed from this particular replica. So let's go to the history here and then let's see what do we see here. So if we see here, so again, if you see here, the availability group backup preference is secondary and is preferred backup replica, it is set to no. So what we'll do now, let's go to JBS AG2 and then see there if what is that we are seeing as far as the preferred replica and the comments there is concerned. So let's go here and then if I see here, what I'm seeing here is like the backup is definitely happened here. So if we see here, availability group backup preference in secondary and is preferred backup replica, that is set to S here, and that's the reason the backup happened on JBS AG2. We started the backup job on JBS AG1, JBS AG2, and JBS AG3, but the backup actually happened when we started the job in JBS AG2. Yep, let's look at this one. Now what I'll do is like I will do the same thing for the transaction log backup. Yeah, so full user database and log. Let me start this job. The job is completed, and if I see here, I don't see anything happen for the transaction log. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do it from JBS AG2, and here the job is running now. And if I go to the backup folder, what I'm seeing is like the log backup has happened, yeah, 2 p.m. That's what it is right now. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start the backup job from JBS AG3 as far as the transaction log backup is concerned, and let's see what happens there. The job is started now. Let's give it like a couple of more seconds. The job is completed. Now, if I look at the log folder, what I'm seeing is like the backup has not happened. So it is basically like the backup happened when we started the full database backup. The backup happened, and also the transaction log backup when we started the job in JBS AG2. The backup happened there. So it is very clear. It is pretty clear that as soon as we selected this preferred secondary, what happened is like the backups are happening on the JBS AG2 replica. Yep. So now let's go to the availability group replica properties one more time, and then go to the backup preference. And it basically tells like automated backup for this availability group should occur on a secondary replica. If there is no secondary replica, that is when it will be performed on the primary replica. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to log into JBS AG2, and then going to stop JBS AG2, and I will check what will happen if we stop JBS AG2, and then let's start the backup on JBS AG1 and JBS AG3, and then see if the backup is happening when I started the backup on JBS AG3, and then I will stop JBS AG3, and then we will start the backup on the primary replica, and then see if the backup is happening then. We will stop the SQL services on JBS AG2, and then we will try performing the backup. We will basically start the full database backup job on JBS AG1 and JBS AG3, and then see if the backup is happening on JBS AG3 or not. So the backup preference is set to prefer secondary, and the backups till now are happening on JBS AG2. So what I've done is like I've stopped the SQL services on JBS AG2. So now what we'll do is like, let's try starting this backup here. Before that, let's look at how many backups we have as far as the full database backup is concerned. We just have one backup here. So now what I'll do is like I will start the backup again on let's do it first on JBS AG1, and then see what happens. So we are on JBS AG1. So let's try starting the backup here, the job, and then see what happens. So it is completed. So let's go to the location. So the backup is not there. So that means like we are not taken a backup there. So now what we'll do is like we will try starting the same job, that is user database full backup on JBS AG3. So let's wait for the job to complete. The backup is started. The job is basically started. Let's see once it completes if we are able to see the backup or not. So just give a couple of more minutes. Let's see what happens. So if you see here, the backup is definitely happening. We stopped the SQL services on JBS AG2 and we started in AG1. It did not take the backup. In AG3, we started the job and we are able to see the file. I'm just waiting for this job to complete. Once this completes, we know that the backup is definitely happening from JBS AG3. So the backup is completed now. So now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to log into JBS AG3 and then I will stop the backup there, stop the SQL services there as well. Yep. So once we stop it, we will try invoking the backup from AG1 and as per the setting, which is prefer secondary, it basically tells that when the backup is started, it will be performed on the secondary. But if none of the secondaries are available, then the backup should happen on the primary. So let's try doing that. Let's stop the SQL services on AG3 and then let's start the backup on start the backup job on AG1 and then see if the backup happens or not. I'll pause this video and then open the configuration manager, and once everything is ready, I will resume the video back. Okay, I'm now going to stop the SQL services on AG3 as well. So AG2 SQL services is down and AG3 I'm going to stop it now. And once the SQL services goes down in AG3, we will not have any online secondary replicas. We will have only the primary replica. So let's stop the services here and then try starting the backup on JBS AG1 from SQL Server agent and then see if the backup is happening. Let me refresh it. SQL services is down here. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start the backup from AG1. Yep, so let's start it. So the job is running, it completed. Now let's look at the backup folder. So if you see here, the backup is completed. Time is 4:18 p.m. and the backup file is also 4:18 p.m. So it is pretty clear when we selected the backup preference as prefer secondary, the backups happens on the secondary. When the secondary replica is not available, then the backup is happening on the primary replica. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to query the command log table and then let's see what information we have on each of these replicas. Okay, so let's open a new query window and then try checking what we have on the command log table. Command log. Okay, if I run that, what I'm basically seeing is like we have the backup performed on this particular replica, which is JBS AG1, and we have only one backup, and that is taken around 4:18. Now you look at the backup file here, 4:18 p.m. This is when we stopped the SQL services on both JBS AG2 and JBS AG3, and the backup happened on the primary replica, and we are able to see that information. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start the SQL services on JBS AG3 and then on JBS AG2, and then I will be checking the command log details on each of these replica. So remember, we have taken the backup like when we configured this and then we tried performing the backup. What happened is like so the backup was happening initially on JBS AG2. So let's run that. And then if you see here, there is one backup at this time. That is 1:59 p.m. and then another backup. It is a backup log at 14:2. So 13:59, that is 1:59. We have this backup taken. And then another backup was a transaction log backup, which was performed around 2 p.m. So let's go to this, and then if you look at it, it is 2 p.m. Yeah, and then let's check the same thing on JBS AG3 as well. So it's done. If you see here, the backup has happened here. And then if you see the timing, it is 4:15 p.m. And if you look at the backup details here, 4:15, that is around 4:16 p.m. The backup, this is start time though. So if you look at the end time, it is 4:16 p.m. and that is what we are seeing. Yeah, and we were able to see the transaction log backup was also happening. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start this DBCC check DB. Remember, we selected, we have provided the information that the backup, the DBCC check DB should happen on the backup preference node. In our case, we have clearly mentioned like you need to perform this on the secondary replica. So what I'm going to do, let me start this job here. Then let's wait for it to complete. So it is completed now. Let's run the command log again, and then see if we are able to see anything about DBCC check DB here. So JBS AG1 is where we are connected. We are not able to see anything related to DBCC check DB. Now what I'm going to do, let me close this off, close this one as well. Now what I'll do, I will open the job activity monitor on JBS AG2, and then I will check the command log. So the job is started now. Let's wait for it to complete. It's completed. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect to JBS AG2 and then see if DBCC check DB has happened here. So if we see here, it is very clear that DBCC check DB has happened on JBS AG2, which is our secondary replica. If you want to look at it again, let's just refresh the availability group on the primary replica, which is your JBS AG1. And if you see here, this is the primary replica. And now we started the job, the DBCC check DB, that is the integrity check job on JBS AG2, and DBCC check DB has happened there. Now what I'm going to let's check JBS AG3. Let's open the job activity monitor here. And then let's start the integrity checks job here. So the job is started. Okay, it is running now. The job completed. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect this query window to JBS AG3 and then execute select star from command log, and then I'm going to see if check DB has happened. So if you see here, check DB has not happened here. So what is happening is like when JBS AG2 and JBS AG3 is available, and when we have the backup preference set to prefer secondary, and then when we are executing the DBCC check DB with the option where we tell that we have an availability group, and then use the replica that is basically referred to as in the backup preference. It is basically executing the DBCC check DB on the secondary JBS AG2. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Jai Hind.